Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. The SEC has announced that LSU-Alabama has been postponed. Postponed is the key verbiage there because it's clear that all parties involved want to make up this game for many reasons that we have discussed. And I want to go through some of those, and I actually believe that I do have a scenario to play this game. But it's also a situation where it's not just LSU-Alabama. You already know that Auburn-Mississippi State has been postponed this weekend. Tennessee hosting Texas A&M is on the brink, and everything that I've gathered talking to people who cover both teams, they're fully expecting that game to be postponed as well. And then Missouri-Vanderbilt could be teetering with an outbreak at Missouri now. And some might say, well, what's going on with the outbreaks? Well, you had Halloween, and people went to Halloween parties very clearly. And then the one game, though, this week that looks like it actually is going to happen is Arkansas at Florida, and Arkansas's head coach Sam Pittman has tested positive, something that was confirmed today. So Arkansas going to Gainesville is going to be without their head coach. So here's what I think is a reality that we're facing. December the 19th, the week of the SEC championship game, that's going to have to be a full slate of games for the Southeastern Conference. Now, it is very likely that both divisions will have already been decided by that point. And that Bama and Florida, who have the inside track in both, very likely will finish at the top of those two divisions. And they'll play on the 19th. But I think you're going to have to make up games on the 19th as well. By the way, this just in as well from the SEC that Texas A&M at Tennessee has also been postponed. So LSU hosting Bama, Texas A&M at Tennessee for this week. Both games now have been postponed due to positive tests, contact tracing, and quarantine. I want to get into the scenario that I think will allow these games to be played. But I also want to point out, because many have asked, Matt, we've talked a lot about it, certainly on this show, if players test positive, they don't need to test again for 90 days. How is it that this is happening? Well, something I would remind you is it's not so much even just the positive tests, it's the contact tracing, which is killer. One report from Tex Ags at Texas A&M is that they've got 2 players who have tested positive. Just 2. There's only 2 players that have yielded a positive test, but the contact tracing has left them far below the 53 required scholarship players. It's not even the positive tests, it's the contact tracing, which that's another story completely in and of itself, and I could rant and rave on that, but you know how I feel about that. Shove a Q-tip up their nose. If they test positive, sit them down. 14 days for someone who is asymptomatic and does not have a positive COVID test is patently absurd. I digress. Here's how I think this can happen. I think LSU-Alabama needs to be played next weekend on the 21st. So follow me here, okay? Obviously, LSU-Bama won't be played this weekend, so you move it to next weekend, the 21st. Next weekend, LSU is scheduled to play at Arkansas, and Bama is scheduled to play Kentucky. You move LSU-Arkansas to December the 19th, the day of the SEC championship game. Both LSU and Arkansas each currently have 3 losses. They're not going to play in the SEC championship game. You move that game to December the 19th. The other game that would need to be adjusted is Bama-Kentucky. Well, both Bama and Kentucky presently have availability on December the 12th. That's the game the week before the SEC championship game. I'll remind you, LSU is playing Florida on December the 12th. So you have a scenario presently whereby if everything holds and Bama and Florida play in the SEC championship game, Florida would be playing December the 12th against LSU. Bama would be idle December the 12th. So a week before the SEC championship game, Bama would have an open date and Florida would be playing LSU. That's not an equitable situation. So if you're the SEC, it would make a lot of sense. You play LSU and Bama next Saturday in Baton Rouge. You move LSU Arkansas to December the 19th, the day of the SEC championship game, which with all of these postponements, I think you're going to end up having a day full of games, potentially on December the 19th anyway. And you move Alabama, Kentucky to December the 12th. That way both Bama and Florida play the week before the SEC championship game. That means also that Bama would have their full slate. Remember, if this game wouldn't be played, then you'd be talking about a no contest, which would mean it would just be a 9-game schedule for Alabama and for LSU. Bama is very much in the mix for the college football playoff. We all assume if they went out, of course, that they would be in. But what if they ran up against a scenario where they've tripped? Maybe they lost to Florida in the SEC championship game. Would there be a scenario for them to get in? Well, build up your resume as best you can. And this would be, if Bama were to win in Baton Rouge, the best road win they'd have. Remember, they've beaten already A&M and Georgia, but both those games in Tuscaloosa. So this would be, by far to this point, the best road win on Alabama's schedule. So I think Bama wants to play it for that reason. And then if you're LSU, remember, you're $80 million in the red. You were trying to salvage as much revenue as you can by playing a 5-game home schedule. You've already given up one of those games because of a storm that made you play a home game in Columbia, Missouri. So you were really only down to 4 games. And now if you miss the Bama game as well, you're down to 3. Financially, LSU wants to play this. Competitively, Bama wants to play it. I think the SEC and the league as a whole, especially with the TV partners, want as many television windows as possible. You want all 14 teams to play all 10 games, however that has to shake out. And so you're willing to adjust and adapt as necessary to make sure that happens for your sponsors, for your television partners, for the revenue as a whole of the league. And then competitively, if you're LSU, you should want to play this game. One of the things that's annoyed me the most over the last 24 hours is the number of people have said, I don't want to play that game. Like, LSU's going to get their head kicked in. Why go through that? Bro, a year ago, all you people out here peacocking, sticking out your chest, pounding your chest, the greatest this, the GOAT that, Joe Burrow that, LSU championship program. And now all of a sudden you hit a little adversity and you want to tuck tail and run and not play the game? What is that? Where are you when LSU's a 5-touchdown favorite over Northwestern State? Why bother playing that game? Why does Kansas ever bother playing a game? They're a 5-touchdown underdog to everybody. Why does Vanderbilt even bother fielding a football team? It's on the schedule. Go play it. Maybe the threat of getting your behind handed to you would be enough to inspire this uninspired group of LSU players to laser in, focus, and play up to their ability. I'm not telling you they'd win the game, but maybe they show a little pride, a little effort. That goes to the coaches as well. Get on the same page. Go put forth your best performance to avoid a historically embarrassing loss. Another historically embarrassing loss. So there it is. LSU-Bama postponed for this weekend, but I just laid out a scenario how to make it happen. I'll go make it happen. And when it does happen, strap on your helmet, go play your ass off and try to win a football game. And if you lose, live with the result. But play hard. Enough of the 600 yards to Mississippi State, 45 points to Missouri, laying down at halftime against Auburn. Get out of here with that. Where's your pride? Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.